gang? How y'all doing? I just had a quick thought. So, as you know, I'm an instructor, right? So I'm an IT instructor. I was in the Army for almost 9 years. Well, almost 8 years. I got out of the Army last year, May, and I prepared because about a year before I got out, I knew I was getting out. So I got as much education as I could get. I got as many certifications as I could get. I networked. I figured out what city I want to live in. I figured out what the cost of living to live in that city would be. Just really prepared because I know just getting the fuck out wasn't really that good of a plan. Just getting out and I'm gonna get out and everything will work out. Nah, it doesn't work like that. So what I did was just prepared. Like I said, just prepared, just to make sure that I was gonna not be fucking living underneath a freeway, a month after I get out the military. So that brings me to my story. So I was teaching, what was it? Well, 2-3 days ago, and I got a message on Facebook, and it was from a name that I kind of remember, but I can't remember exactly who they were. And so I got the message, and the message said, "Hey, you work at XYZ?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Oh, you used to be in the Army, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Yeah, I thought I remembered you." I was like, "What you?" Like, "Who was this?" And the guy was like, "I used to be stationed at blah, 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 and I think I just saw you." And I was like, "You a student here?" And he was like, "Yeah." And then he, said a couple of things that jogged my memory. I said, "Oh, shit, well, come over to my classroom right quick." And he came over to my classroom, and long story short, he said he got out. He didn't have a plan. He ended up being unemployed. He about to get a divorce. Just a lot of turmoil and just a lot of, stress and shit. And I'm just saying, when you are in the Army, right, or any branch of the military, you got to make sure that you remain independent because the military will make you dependent. All right, they pay for housing, they pay for insurance, they pay for this, they pay for that. And at a regular job in real life, you gotta pay for all the shit yourself. They're not paying for shit. They're gonna give you a check and insurance. Maybe they'll give you some insurance, but as far as paying for where the fuck you stay at, nah. You gotta figure that out with your own check. So if you're in the military, right, make sure that you get as much education as you can get. Any training they want to send you to, make sure they send you to it, because that's one thing. Me being in the military, being in leadership positions, working with people that, to be honest, I would have never even talked to if we didn't have to talk to each other. It just made me, be able to work with a multitude of people, pretty much work with anybody, right? It taught me how to be a good leader as well as a good follower. And like I said, you have to prepare. If you're about to get out the military, like I said, I would say you need a year minimum. If it's just one day and you like, man, fuck this shit, PT, you up at 4 o'clock in the morning, rolling around in the mud, or you in the damn, in Iraq or Afghanistan, sweating your ass off, and you like, oh, this shit ain't worth it. That day, a year from that day is when you need to get out. All right, you need at least a year. All right, now if your contract is like 2 years, that gives you even more time to prepare, right? So like I said, get your education while you're in there. Any training that they'll send you to, go to it. Certifications, anything that you can get, make sure that you get it, because it's going to be only beneficial when you get out of the military. Only beneficial. So, another thing, save up your money. Save as much as you can. So just in case, if it is a little bit of a lull or a little bit of a drought when you first get out, you have, enough money to fucking survive. And another thing, if you're getting out of the military, if you've been in for a substantial amount of time, you may get disability, be compensated. So that might soften the blow a little bit if you can't find employment immediately. But don't, don't depend on that, because, maybe that can get snatched away from you at any time. Maybe you don't get anything with disability. If you go to school, right? If you go to school, once you get out, Most schools, depending on if you go online or if you physically go, you can get BAH, which is basic housing allowance. So they'll give you, a little bit of money to sustain yourself. But usually, even with, just the BAH alone and even your disability, it's probably not going to be enough to sustain your life. It'd be enough to pay this and that, but as far as, it won't cover all your bills. So you're still going to have to, go do something. But anyway, to have a stress-free transition, just prepare. Just prepare, that's all. Make sure you're prepared. And when you're in those transition classes, make sure you're paying attention, because there's actually some really good and useful information. I've been out for 1 year, right? 1 year. And for the most part, all the guys that I started out with, the ones that got out, they doing pretty bad right now. They doing pretty bad. And most of them, I believe, is just because, for one, they didn't do what the fuck they needed to do while they was in. Anytime it was training, they didn't want to go. Anytime they got a chance to get some education, they didn't want to fucking do it. And just not preparing. You can't just get out. You can't just get the fuck out. Okay, I hate this shit, so I'm gonna get out. And just think that the world owe you something. That's another thing. Seems like a lot of veterans feel like somebody owes them something, right? I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel that way at all. It's like, shit, I'm a grown man. I decided to join the military, so I need to figure out what the fuck I need to do when I decide to get out. So just do what you need to do and prepare. In the comments below, if you got any questions, let me know. If you have any suggestions, any comments, I am about to get out, what you think. And then another thing, when you prepare, when you stretch it out for a while, it gives you time to think, gives you time to prepare, and by the time you hit, your ETS, or when it's time for you to get out, you can reevaluate. Like, a year ago I wanted to get out, but shit, now I'm at a new unit, or now I got a different job, or now this happened, that happened, and it ain't that bad. I actually like it now, right? Or it could come, you like, yeah, this shit still sucks, so I'm glad I fucking that I prepared so I can get the fuck up out of here. But another thing I can say, even me, I prepared, right? I prepared and had jobs and shit lined up and everything. But when it came time to actually ETS, I was nervous as hell. And the re-enlistment, NCO, the re-enlistment guy, kept on calling me, hey, I can get you this, I can get you choice to do the assignment, I can give you a bonus, I can get it. But it was like, no, man, no. Because it just was like, I came to a point to where, like, I just felt like I had got, everything I was going to get out of the Army, and I knew that I wasn't going to be giving it 100% anymore. And I knew that, the troops and stuff deserve better than that. So, anyway, if you're in the military, you're thinking about getting out, just prepare. Because I got too many stories about motherfuckers that got out and just shit went all bad. Like I said, don't nobody owe you nothing. You got to make sure you get an education. And another thing, if you're in the MOS, some people have to, get certain MOSs, which is, your job, just to qualify to get into the military. But I would suggest, if you don't have a skill that's going to translate into the real world, you need to, finish your contract 2-3 years, re-enlist, to go to school, get a different MOS in IT, just something that's going to translate, right? And if you, and another thing is, in the military, what you're making in the military is not going to fucking translate to what you're going to make in the real world, especially for most MOSs. If you were E7 and you were a cook, and you making goddamn, 60, 65, 70, you've been there for 20 years, you making damn 65, 70,000 with BH and all that shit, you're not gonna make that when you get out. Unless you some kind of damn exquisite chef, which if you was working in a defect, your ass is not. But just make sure that you get a skill that is gonna translate to the real world. And that's for college students as well. Just anybody. Don't just go just to go, right? And like I said, if you're new to the military, man, I got 3 years, I got 4 years, man, that shit is gonna go by like this, like that, literally, right? It may not feel like that when you actually, doing the shit, but trust me, mine went by super fast. And I honestly ain't really started going hard with my education until about till I was in for like 4 or 5 years. And then I realized, like, man, I got all these benefits, I gotta, get my shit together. So anyway, climb up the ranks, another thing, right? Climb up the ranks, get promoted, get as much responsibility as you can, right? So I was E6, had to do this, had to do that, I was responsible for a bunch of motherfuckers. The more responsibility that you get in the military, the easier shit is gonna be when you get out. Cause like at my job now, motherfuckers be complaining about, oh, we gotta stay 10 minutes late, we gotta do this, we gotta come in on Saturday, we gotta do. And it's just like every now and again. We ain't even gonna do that shit that much. And me, you know, I'm used to fucking, you know, we don't train the time, we train the standard, you know what I'm saying? Not knowing when the fuck you gonna go home. Having damn 24-hour duty, you know, not going to sleep and being responsible for 100 grown motherfuckers. So anyway, long story short, sorry I went in a couple different directions, but just wanted to cover a couple different things in this video. If you in the military and you transitioning, just make sure that you prepare. All right.